Let me just find my PowerPoint.
Should be fine.
All right.
And then the cleanest down to progress.
Okay. Hi everybody, my name is Richard Park. I'm a second year PhD student and I work on batteries. And what are batteries? Well, they're the stuff inside your phones that give you electricity, right? So I just want to start with a little disclaimer. So in the scientific community, batteries are a really highly debated field with a lot of differing opinions, and sometimes it can get really ugly. So I just want to say that this presentation just reflects my own personal views that I formed as a graduate student working in a battery-obsessed lab. So really, consume with caution, let the buyer beware. So why do we care about batteries? Here are two reasons why we might care about batteries. One is transportation, like cars. You can power a Chevy Volt, a Nissan Leaf, a Toyota Prius, or a Tesla with a battery. Or electronics. I mean, you have Apple iPhones, Apple iPads, Apple iPods, and Samsung Galaxies. There's a third really important type of batteries for grid storage, but I don't really want to spend too much time on that because it's quite separate, right? But we can talk about that in the Q&A. So what I want to talk about today is one, how does a battery work? I just want to give a little bit of a scientific overview of the fundamental science behind that. So when they asked me to do this, I got this cryptic email that told me to prepare like a talk with thought-provoking, interesting discussion points. So I sat in my office, I scratched my head for a while, and because you've come to this talk, I'll try and give the answer to the following three questions. One, why does your phone die so quickly? Like, why can't it last longer? Two, what's the second one? The second one is something about cars. Oh, right, Tesla. So if you're going with the news, you might see like Tesla having all these like hyped up marketing promos saying, oh, you can charge your car in 5 minutes. Well, I'll tell you if that's possible or not. And finally, if you're an investor, you know, if you have a lot of money and you want to invest in the next big thing, I'll tell you what maybe you should invest in. So listen up. Oh yeah, and number three, what are batteries of the future like? That's more science over there. All right. So how does a battery work? Well, on the left, you have an ancient Greek king called Sisyphus who was rolling a boulder up a hill, right? And if once it's done, like the boulder can, you know, roll back down. So what has this got to do with batteries? Well, I think it's actually quite a similar analogy, right? So when you roll a boulder up a hill, you're storing energy by lifting the boulder up, and you can release the energy later by letting the boulder roll down. And so this is really basically the concept behind pumped hydro. And inside your battery, you have a really analogous process taking place with lithium ions. So what I mean by that is that in your battery, it's a sandwich of three materials. It's called the anode, electrolyte, and cathode. So think of the cathode and the anode as maybe the bottom and top of your hill. The boulder is the lithium ion, which is just a chemical. And the separator represents separates the electrolyte. That sort of represents the mountain. So when you charge a battery, when you plug your phone into the wall, power from your wall, the house, the grid, is pushing these lithium ions up the hill towards the anode. And then when you plug it out of the wall and you walk around and you're like going on Facebook, then these lithium ions are falling down the hill and they're going from the anode to the cathode, and that's really the fundamental working principle of the battery. And so as the lithium moves, it just so happens to be that electrons, which are also stored inside your battery, follow the lithium around sort of in like the external circuit. We can talk more about that later, but that's basically the principle of a battery. So first question, where's the good long-lasting stuff, right? If technology is improving at this breakneck pace and we're ending up with these amazing electronics, where are the good batteries? Well, so one fundamental thing to recognize about batteries is that if you have a computer chip that's scalable to small sizes because all you need are some fundamental functional components, and it doesn't matter how big they are. But then on the other hand, take something like a bucket of water, where if you have a 1 liter bucket of water, then you need a liter of space. So you can't really do much. You can't really engineer a 1 liter bucket of water. So ask yourself, do you think a battery, which is like a bucket of energy, is more like a computer chip or a bucket of water? And herein lies the fundamental challenge of battery science. And this is why things are so hard. How do you store 1 liter of water in something that's smaller than a liter. And so as electronics increase, like the power consumption of everything just increases so much, and it's really hard to keep up. And that's why the golden age of the Nokia brick phone is really not what we have today. So next question, can you charge a Tesla in 5 minutes? So again, analogy into the fundamental science of battery processes. So this is a street in China, a lot of cars going in both ways. And so inside your battery, imagine you have a multi-million lane highway with lithium and like electrons just moving in both directions. So if you want current, if you want to charge your battery, or if you want to discharge your battery, if you want to store power or release power, you have to ask some cars to move in like one net direction. So for example, if we have 10 cars coming towards us over this way, you need maybe like 15 cars going the other way if you want net power, right? So if you want to charge something like a Tesla car battery in 5 minutes, you're asking it to provide an incredibly high amount of current in a short amount of time. So what that's analogous to, right, is like I have to ask all these cars to move in one direction, right? And so if I had a lot of money, I could probably do that. Like I don't have that much money, but if I was like Jeff Bezos, then maybe I could walk up to all these guys and say, hey, I'll give you $100 if you drive the other way, right? So if you want to charge your Tesla in 5 minutes, that's really what you got to do. Am I saying that's impossible? No, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. But you can see that this kind of action is really unsustainable, and that's the word I want to emphasize, unsustainable. It's possible, but you're going to run out of money sooner or later if you ask your battery to do something so demanding like that. So really the question is, okay, if you made a Tesla that charges in 5 minutes, how long can your battery last before it really degrades and you can't really use it anymore? That's really the hidden question that is not touched so much in the media, right? So on the note of electric cars, Patrick did a great job of, motivating why we should care about electric cars. I was wondering, when will electric cars take over? When will we reach this golden utopia of clean energy and transportation where we don't need petrol burning fuels anymore? So this reputable consulting firm called McKinsey once did a study, and they hypothesized that electric cars will become cheaper than like combustion engine cars when the battery cost, which is the most expensive part really of like this electric car thing, when the battery cost is less than $100 per kilowatt hour, right? So I just want to like deconstruct why these things are so expensive, like why you can't just go out and just buy a Tesla, right? It's because modern good batteries, the batteries that scientists consider to be like the best battery, like that ticks all these multiple different requirements of like longevity, power, energy density, is the lithium-ion battery. And although it's called a lithium-ion battery, it should actually be called like a cobalt oxide battery, because the most expensive thing inside your battery is cobalt. So cobalt is actually like really expensive. So this is again part of the McKinsey study. So batteries have been going down, but as any person studying economics will know, past trends are not indicative of future performance. So we're in a really interesting economic situation right now, because although the cost has been going down, if you look at the cobalt prices, which is the next slide, so I just slightly, yeah. So I've already said that your batteries have a lot of cobalt. If you look at the cobalt prices, they're actually like going up really quick. And this is quite unexpected. Even 2 years ago, they cost maybe like 25 times 10 to the 3 US dollars per ton. In 2018, if you go on the London's metal exchange and you look at the cobalt prices, they're like really high. So whether electric cars will ever take over, I don't know. Depends on what happens with the cobalt prices. And this is like a very interesting ethical question, because you really need cobalt. Like cobalt is an integral part of today's battery. Like a lot of the manufacturing processes are designed around cobalt. It also just happens to be a lot of the cobalt you can't really source in the US. You've got to get it from places like the Congo, where sketchy, unethical things are done with children to obtain this cobalt. So really, I'm not trying to like say anything. I'm just trying to like explain the status quo, and that batteries have a really interesting geopolitical challenges to like navigate as we move on to the future. So that's all interesting. That's a bunch of problems, right? So then I have to defend my profession somehow. Like, what are the scientists doing? Like, what's the next big thing? How will we save the world, right? So a battery of today, it's a lithium-ion battery. These are just numbers for measuring how much energy you can store. So you can store somewhere between the 150 to 250 watt hours per kilogram of energy inside this battery. They're also flammable. So the separator, the thing that I told you represents the mountain, it can catch fire. So that's also a problem, right? So the objective of any battery scientist is to try and improve any of these 5 things. You either want to try and move away from cobalt. So if you can use manganese instead of cobalt, which is cheaper, more abundant, but you compromise on energy and power a little bit. You want to improve the energy density. It's in red because that's sort of what I work on, and I can talk a little bit more about that. The other 5 I'll list. We can talk more about it in quick Q&A. You can also try and improve the power density, the longevity, or just its safety. Right. So one example of a thing that we do in the lab, right, is if we want to try and improve the energy density. So remember that 1 liter bucket analogy? If you want to store a liter of water in maybe 500 milliliters bucket. So it's actually sort of possible because if you just change the material, you can change the energy density. So there's only one technology, like proposed technology, that can make your battery more energy dense than what we have right now. And you do that by replacing your carbon anode, which is a lithium sponge, into just pure lithium. And this is the only thing you can do if you want to make your battery, if you keep it the same size and make it last longer. And if you do that, you can really improve your energy density by a lot. You can get up to 750 watt hours per kilogram, which is like a threefold increase. But there's no such thing as a free lunch. You can't just do this. There are a lot of compromises you have to make. And really the biggest compromises you have to make when you do this is safety and longevity. So the problem with these guys is you can't charge and recharge lithium-ion batteries a lot, because the more you do that, So, how I said the analogy is that you have a boulder rolling up a hill and rolling back down? If you replace, if you have a lithium anode, as the mountain just wears down really quick, and the mountain becomes really unsafe, and the mountain becomes real hot, and the mountain catches on fire, right? So there are multiple ways. So one possible way a battery can catch fire is if you have a lithium metal anode and you try to charge it too quickly, you end up with this thing called a dendrite, which is a bit of lithium that just goes through the entire battery, connects the 2 electrodes, and there's a short circuit that generates a lot of heat, and that can burn the things around it and catch fire, right? So don't recharge these guys, but they're not useless. I mean, they're great for missiles, weaponry, but they're terrible for phones and cars. So don't buy a lithium anode phone, but if you want to buy a lithium metal missile, go right ahead, right? So really, one strategy to mitigate this is try and replace the flammable separator electrolyte with ceramics, hard inflammable ceramics. And that's sort of what my research is on. I'm trying to understand if ceramics can really stop this problem, right? So that's a shameless self-promotion. Right, so if you're a Jeff Bezos, what should you invest in, right? So again, I'm trying to stress that there are a lot of metrics. There's cost, energy density, power density, cycle life, and safety. One thing I really want to stress is that it's really, really hard to beat the lithium-ion batteries winning combination. So if I had to bet on a technology, it'd probably be still the lithium-ion battery, because it's really been perfected over many, many years. But it's really at its limit, right? So some other kinds of batteries you might have heard about, and I'll just list these. If you have any questions about any particular one, we can talk about them in Q&A. You can try and replace the lithium ion with some cheaper metals, such as sodium ions or magnesium ions. You can try and replace that whole metal kind of system with sulfur. You can get a lithium sulfur battery. They're proposed to be really cheap, but again, you compromise on voltage. You might have heard of lithium air. I recommend you scrub that word out of your brain, because it's a terrible, useless kind of battery. Don't worry about that. Silicon anode, there's silicon sort of between carbon and lithium in the spectrum of 1 liter bucket, 750 milliliter bucket, 500 milliliter bucket, all storing 1 liter of water. But silica's not that great either, and solar electrolyte, I just talked about that. So again, it's a really complicated, multifaceted field. A lot of emerging technologies come with their own unique flavors and challenges, and if you're curious, just ask away. Thank you very much.